I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame, and not that you planned it. No, I just lived life to the best that I could. This is an explanation point to my career. It's like a thing. Yeah, done.
Welcome back to Cowgirl Beyond, the official podcast of the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame, where we go beyond the exhibits to share the voices and stories of women shaping the spirit of the West. In today's episode, we're honored to sit down with Carole Jackson-Holyan, a proud citizen of the Navajo Nation, rodeo champion, entrepreneur, and cultural advocate. Carole's story is one of breaking barriers, from becoming the youngest INFR world champion in barrel racing at just 11 years old to serving as the first and only woman commissioner and vice president of the INFR. We'll talk about her journey in the arena and beyond, how her father's legacy inspired her to champion Native athletes, how she's grown into a leader for Indigenous women through business and mentorship, and how she continues to bridge cultures through rodeo, education, and community. So saddle up and join us as we celebrate the power of heritage, leadership, and perseverance. This is Cowgirl Beyond with Carole Jackson-Holyan. Carole, it is such an honor to have you here today.
Hello, thank you.
Yes.
I'm very glad to be here.
We are so glad to have you. So we'll kick off with the icebreaker.
Okay.
You can teach us any word in Navajo that you would like to teach us.
I think I'd like to teach you the word horse, and to say that in Navajo is clean.
Clean?
It's clean. You kind of have to put your tongue on top of the roof of your mouth and
Clean.
Yeah.
Clean.
Yeah, and horses are pretty important in our culture, and so it's probably a word that resonates with everyone in our...
Yeah. Very evidently.
Yes.
And in your life as well, right?
Absolutely.
So, Carole, your story begins with such a rich family legacy. Your father was instrumental in the founding of the INFR and advancing education through the Dene College. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in the Navajo Nation and how your father, Dean Jackson, shaped your path?
Yes. So my dad began the sport of rodeo in about his probably mid-20s. He spent a majority of his life in Oklahoma at the Chilocco Indian School. He was part of the forced assimilation program where they removed Native American children from their homes to help them, so they thought, learn English and educate them and make them colonized, so to speak. And so he spent a lot of his time here in Oklahoma and then returned back to the nation where he met my mom, who happened to be relocating from California. My mom is not Native. And so together they began their life, and he began the journey of rodeoing. Wow. And I feel like during this time, he learned a lot being here. You know, in adult education, you don't know what you don't know. And the second phase is you know what you don't know. And that is when he realized, like, in order for me to do this, I've got to have a better horse. I have to have horsemanship. I have to learn to conduct myself in a professional manner. And so I believe that's where he instilled that in us. And so he came to, not too far from here, a ranch in Mineral Wells, Texas, the Elmer Siebel Ranch. And I don't even know if it still exists. He got a couple of horses from there with good quality bloodlines and brought them home and sent them to be trained. And then sent us to get trained. And that's how my journey began, barrel racing at that point in time.
Wow. Well, that's definitely a journey that you started. And he definitely put you guys on the right path, because, I mean, at 11 years old, you became the INFR world champion, which is impressive. And from everything I would see, it was always between you and your sister.
Yes.
So you guys were always the top contenders in everything that you did. Living all of those experiences and starting off as a fearless little girl, you know, winning at 11 years old and then becoming Miss Indian Rodeo. What memory of that time impacted you the most that led to who you are as a person now?
I feel like initially when I was rodeoing, we didn't travel very far. We stayed primarily on our reservation, on our nation. And I did well there. I didn't really know what could be involved. You know, I was 11 at the time, 9, 10, 11. And around that time, my father became a commissioner with the Indian National Finals Rodeo. And I remember him telling me there's going to be a big rodeo and it's going to be in Salt Lake City. And I was just like, didn't even know where that was. Primarily, I'd probably been to maybe Albuquerque and Phoenix, didn't travel much off our nation. And so when I got to Salt Lake, to the first INFR, we were in a hotel. And I'd never been to a hotel to that beauty, you know, and the elevator was a glass wall, and I just remember just like, I never had competed in such a large arena. It was at the Salt Palace, and I remember my first run was okay. You know, I'd never been exposed to anything like this, and the next morning we got up and he says, I think we should probably think about going home. And I was like, why? And he was like, I don't think you're ready, you know? And I was like, what do you mean? You know? And that put a fire under me. I was like, oh no, I'm going to show you that I'm ready. You know, I'm not going home, and we're going to go and do this. And so, and that just kind of ignited my career, I believe, at that point. And just began rodeoing and running barrels and traveling all over. And, you know, and the INFR grew and grew and grew. And so I'm from the Navajo Nation, but we would compete against other tribes. And then it became a sort of a competition between which tribe has the better competition, you know. And so about that time, the Miss Indian Rodeo pageant began, and I was the third to win. And I just thought it was a way to embrace my rodeo and embrace, you know, I'd seen the other girls and what they did, and I thought, well, I would like to do that. And it was a great experience. I traveled all over. I went to many nations and into Canada, and it was probably a big highlight of my career also. But I was also ready when it was over to be like, okay, I'm going to go back to competing.
That's how I feel right now as well. You know, right now that you're mentioning all of how you were able to travel to so many different places and experience so many things, it sounds like this is what built you. And in the base of everything that you started, it sounds like it built you wanting more and more in your career, which is really interesting to see, you know, at such a young age that you said it lit a fire in you, and that's kind of where it all started. Do you remember the moment that you won the INFR?
I actually do, but I don't remember that I won. Like, I know I did well, and my mom and dad came running down like, you did it, you know, and then I was just like, okay, you know. And when they were doing, you know, at the beginning of the event, you know, they do group pictures. And they said, okay, barrel racers, come on down. So my mom said, go get in the picture. No, she said, go get in the picture. And I was like, they told me I couldn't. And she was like, why? She said, this is just for contestants. Little girl, go sit over there. And so I did. And she marched right down there and she said, you are going to retake this picture because she is a contestant. And they were like, she is? So they put me in the group photo, took the photo. And I remember after the event, when they were awarding the trophy saddles, there was a long rope hanging from the Salt Palace for the rodeo clown to swing on or something. I was climbing on that, you know, and didn't even think much about getting my saddle on. My mom was like, you need to come down and go get your saddle.
You're a champion.
At that point, I was like, okay. And so then I remembered at that point getting my saddle, and just, I didn't know really what it meant that I won. And I didn't know how amazing the Indian National Finals would become at that point. From there, I got invited to ride in the Rose Bowl Parade. Went to Pasadena and participated in that, and just the doors started opening, and I started traveling and doing a lot of things. And you know, at 11 years old, that's a hard adjustment, so to speak, between wanting to go play with my friends down the street and having my practice session also. So, you know, it was a heavy load at times also.
Yeah, it's discipline. I mean, you end up learning discipline at such a young age. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, earlier when you got here, we were talking about how your family is a family of champions. I mean, evidently, you won the INFR and are still winning and have been a multiple time champion. Your kids, your husband, you're in the Hall of Fame for the INFR. What does that mean to you, and what does that mean to have your family's legacy be so prominent in your community?
It's something that is not planned. It just happens. I feel like I have 3 different eras of my life. My first era with my dad as a Jackson, and rodeoing with my sisters, and traveling. And, you know, my dad always said, learning goes beyond the classroom walls. And that's what I wanted to instill in my children as well. And so that era with my dad, and happened, and I did well. And then, I met my husband, and then that era happened.
Yeah.
And, he was very supportive in just all my craziness. Like, I think I'm going to sell this horse, and I think I'm going to do this. And he'd be like, okay. And then the kids came along, and it was just a matter of them. We're at practice, so they're there opening gates, loading cattle, and getting them a horse at that time. And then they get on, and then that starts happening. And so it was just like, it wasn't anything really intentionally planned. It was just our way of life, a way of making a living at that time. And also our kids then picked it up, and then they started traveling. And one thing that I'm pretty proud of for the Indian National Finals Rodeo is we started the junior division and the senior division. So when we competed, they competed. And Grandma and Grandpa got to compete, not mine, but other families.
Yeah.
And so the whole family stuck together. And still to this day, it's what is one of our founding blocks for the youth for the Indian National Finals Rodeo.
Yeah. And family is the base of it all. That's what we were saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Even for myself and my sport as well, it's the same thing. Everything revolves around your family and being able to do everything together. And I think that's what makes the experience better. It makes it unforgettable being able to live all of those moments with the people you love the most. And as you were mentioning, your kids opening gates and loading cattle, and you're living the background experiences with them and then the highs with them. So that's so beautiful to see. And seeing, just like I mentioned, the track record of your family is incredible. So it's amazing that you guys have been able to create such a name for your family and represent so well.
Thank you.
And beyond rodeo, you've also built an incredible business through Zion Enterprises. Can you tell us a little bit about your mission and the work you do with Native organizations?
I began Zion Enterprises as a means to be able to spend more time with my family. I was working a corporate job. I would leave super early in the morning, come home super late, and I didn't see my family very much. I was trying to make my career happen.
Yeah.
And they would go and rodeo and come back. And I remember my daughter saying, Dad, remember when we did this? And remember, they were talking about a trip they had been on and I missed, and I was just like, dang, I'm really missing out here. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I started planning my get away from the corporate world.
Yeah.
It was my goal. I'm going to go be a vice president of this corporation. I'm going to, do all these great things. I want to be the first Native woman to be a vice president. But then I realized that wasn't going to benefit my relationship with my family at that point. So I decided to transition out slowly. I transferred to another location and up closer to our reservation, and I started my exit plan, and I was like, something will come along, and something did. I was able to join a gaming company that let me work from home. So I traveled with the kids, and I would fly out here and there for an event if I needed to, and I got to spend great time with my family. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do something else. And at that time, my sister was working with another company, and they said they're closing and they want to do this. And I said, well, let's just do this together. So we started Zion Enterprises and started working a lot with Indian country. At the same time, still traveling with my family, still getting to see the world and be with them. And it's probably, it was a little hard because it wasn't as financially stable with my corporate job, but at the same time, I spent time with my family, and now our business is really flourishing and growing. And so I felt like the seeds were planted, and now it was probably a great move. It was a great move.
Yeah, evidently so. And now that you mention having those, difficult times and seeing the bigger picture of always wanting to be around your family and being able to move with them, whenever you felt at a low point or you felt like, if you ever felt a moment of, did I make the right decision? What pushed you through that?
I guess finding the moments and the memories of the things that we did.
Yeah.
We traveled so many places, and the children were homeschooled. And so it was a time of being together, and like anything, like, remember when we went here? And I'm like, yeah, remember we did this.
You were a part of it.
Yes. And I wasn't just like on the outside looking in. So it's those moments that got me through. And my family, I have a pretty close relationship with my siblings.
Yeah.
And anytime one of us is on a bumpy road, it's usually a call to them and my mom. And saying, you got this.
Yeah.
Let's get through it. And this is what we should consider doing. Yeah.
Family is the backbone of it all.
Absolutely.
It's what pushes you through. So you've also been deeply involved with Women Empowering Women for Indigenous Nations. What kind of impact have you seen through that work, and what are you most proud of with that?
I think what I'm most proud of is that it's a time where it's 4 days of just being with women and honoring all of our cultures and the women movement and just embracing Indian country and the women involved. There's a lot of powerful women in the organization, and it's a time where it's a lot of work. We're the event planners, we put it together, but when you get there and you share this moment with one another, it's so empowering because you feel the energy that you can feel from each of these women and their stories, in which we're all going through. Each of us have our own path, but I just feel like you meet so many people. You meet elders in the community who have done so much for their nations, and then you meet the youth who are coming up, and it's a time to pass the baton or learn from one another and grow within that. And so I think that conference, it actually just ignites the fire for people when they leave. And when they leave, they're like, we're coming back. This was so great. We want to do this again. And so it's really a great event that we have.
That's amazing. You get the opportunity for everybody to kind of, in a way, feed off of each other and learn from each other in bits and pieces. And that's probably what I've always said. There's moments where you're around people that you feel like it replenishes your soul and your mission and your purpose. So it sounds like that's exactly what that is.
A lot of times, as in our culture, you're taught to be tough, be strong, don't cry.
Yeah.
And we find that that's not also good either, So when we get together at this conference, there's a lot of deep issues that are shared and discussed. In Indian country, suicide's still prominent. It's very high. Alcoholism. A lot of places still don't have running water or electricity, and it's tackling those issues. The missing and murdered has become a hot topic in Indian country. And so it's a time to share and to say, let's together get through this. Let's help one another as women to move through this. So while it is a lot of fun, there are a lot of deep discussions that happen, and sharing and praying and helping one another.
Yeah. Well, it's such an honor that you're also here with us today and you're bringing light to those topics.
Thank you.
Because you never know who could be watching. It's our mission with this podcast is that there's going to be different groups of younger generations coming in and being able to learn from this. So I'm really glad that you mentioned all of that and are bringing light to it. And you're the representation today and tomorrow for all of this, which is amazing. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things that that really stuck with me when I was doing all of the research and looking at everything was the fact that you were the pivotal factor as to why the INFR got taken to the South Point. How did you celebrate that? And when you walk in there, do you feel that same feeling every time from the first time? Like, how does that feel for you, being so important in that movement?
I think at the time we were there was a original 5 commissioners that started the Indian National Finals Rodeo, and as they got older and they have all passed since, little by little they added new commissioners, and I was selected as the first female, and the Indian National Finals Rodeo has had, it's a beautiful event, but it does struggle financially as putting on an event to that caliber. And we were looking for a home, and we had been a couple of places, and it just was, we barely get by, or we would, have to figure out ways to make the event happen. One thing that we didn't ever want to do was cancel or not have it. And so at that time, the South Point came through and was like, would you consider coming here? And so as a commission, we decided to move it to Las Vegas, and it was a chance, but everything happens in Las Vegas, the NFR, so many events. And so we thought it would be a good move. And we knew that our fan base, a lot of them come from Arizona and New Mexico, that they would fill the seats and sell tickets. And so we made the move, and it was scary, and it was, will this work, and can it work? And it did, and it took a little time to get the word out, and that this was going to be our home. And so, yeah, I do remember the first time we walked in, and it was like, here we are, and this is what's going to happen. And we've been there, I think, over 15 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's right now the home of the INFR, and where we say our champions are made. And so we're all very proud as a commission that this is where we made a bold move and that we feel happy with.
Yeah, it's really impressive. You're a true representation and example for young minority women, especially those who have to advocate to stay connected to their roots. What advice can you give to those young girls who feel that they have to suppress their identity or culture to advance in this modern day world?
I would say lean on your elders, lean on your community, lean on other Native American or minority families that you're with, because we help one another. We build on one another. This year or in years before, we've seen Native American women make it to the peak of the National Finals Rodeo. My niece, Cassidy Dennison, made it.
Wow.
And seeing my brother-in-law walk her down the alleyway was so empowering. And it, not only for me, not only for our family, for other Native American women out there that, we have hardships, we have difficulties, we really go through a lot, but it can be done. And now with the Indian National Finals Rodeo, we started breakaway roping in the 80s. And I feel that was the stepping stone for our girls that have made it quickly, because we have been doing it for a while. To see Danielle Lohman and now Bailey Bates and the other Native American women who have competed, it's because of our communities and where we come from and who we have. And one thing for sure is we can count on one another to help each other. It's just a matter of asking. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to think you're the only one in this, and don't be afraid to learn. Learn from others, not only in the Native American community, but others in the professional world, others in the ranching lifestyle, to ask the questions, and don't think you're not enough and that you can do it.
Yeah, that is amazing. You're very right in the sense that you mention that it's simply just asking. Mm-hmm. Many times we don't realize, like you said, that a lot of us go through the same struggles. Mm-hmm. Even though we all have different paths, we all have different accomplishments, we all have different careers, we all have very many different aspects to our lives. At the core, we all, to get to where we are, have to go through so much. Mm-hmm. And we can all learn little bits and pieces from each other, even across cultures. I mean, this is an example of it right now. I'm amazed learning from you, everything that you have experienced, everything that you have gone through in your life. And we had that little connection at the beginning about how I come from a cultural sport as well that's very rooted in family. Mm-hmm. And family sometimes is overlooked. Mm-hmm. We don't realize that the root of everything and who you are is what's going to take you in your life. If you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. So you're a true example of that. To finish it off, I wanted to ask you, throughout your career, as you've worked for your community, have you ever paused and thought about what it might have been like for you as a young girl or a young woman early in your career to have resources that you have now built yourself?
I think looking back, I feel like if I could do it again with these resources, it would have been a different story.
Yeah.
And I was asked by Aaron Sinagini, who has made the INFR and the team roping. He'll question me now and then. He'll be like, hey, do you think you could have hung with these girls? I said, oh, yeah, I could have been. I would have. Yeah. So yeah, I think if I had the resources now when I had back then, I think it would have been a different story, you know. And I think, but you can't change the past. It is what it is. And I think the building blocks that were laid for me are the building blocks for others, and for them to grow. And I will applaud in the background saying, this is what the vision the INFR commissioners had in the beginning, and that the new group has had, and the ones following us will have. It's the foundation for our Native American men and women to be the best that they can and to help them to succeed in being a champion.
Most definitely. And it's the fact that sometimes you have to go through all of those difficult moments, all of those obstacles to build who you are. And it's like you mentioned, like it would be a totally different story. Mm-hmm. You probably wouldn't be in the same seat that you are right now.
Yes. I feel like as a minority, you know, we all have our traumas that we went through. And I think those are the strengths that can be used when we're down and out. We have to think of what our ancestors prayed for us and laid down the foundation for us, that it wasn't easy for them, and it's not always easy for us. But when we find that strength and resilience from what was, then it can help us to grow and not ever forget where you come from and who you came from and why they did what they did to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, Carole, being the only woman commissioner in the INFR, how did that feel for you? And how does it feel currently?
I feel like when I first got appointed, I didn't think of it as being a woman on the INFR. I thought of it as a way to open more doors, as a way to, as a competitor, say, this is what we can do to help improve, and as a way to be a voice for our women in the sport. And so as it's growing and as our women are expanding out there professionally, I feel so incredibly proud of them and what's going to come for Indian country and cowgirls.
Yeah. So when you got here, we were talking a little bit about how you had a realization and it struck you that you are going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Cowgirl Museum. And you kind of had to process for a little bit how you got here. Tell me a little bit about that moment and specifically the moments that you feel that have brought you here.
You know, when I got word that I was being inducted, I was like, yay, that's awesome. You know, I won't say generic, but kind of like, that's great. How exciting. And from that point on, I would lay there at night. It was probably one of the last things I process every night. Like, how did I get here? What did I do? And it was in a sense sort of therapy for me, that I went back to so many things and recalled and remembered and remembered the struggles and the hardships my family went through. Rodeo was a way of life for my family, but it also was a way that I provided for my family. You know, I did very well, and I didn't realize at that time that, you know, it was a means financially for my family.
Yeah.
And so I just can recall things that have happened, you know, lessons that my father would say, you know, like, you can do this and use your rodeo skills, and not only me, but other people, because he was an educator, to get a scholarship to go to school. Use your rodeo skills to get a way to provide for your family, because at that time, rodeo wasn't a total way to make a living.
Yeah.
He'd say you can get a good job, you know, but rodeo can provide that skill for you. And that's something that I've always carried with me, that this is a way for us to grow and expand, but at the same time, learn from one another and help one another. And I don't know any specific thing, but I just remember so many things like traveling. And then I remember so many things meeting my husband, and he competed. I remember my father would be, don't limit yourself to just Indian rodeo. And at the age of, I believe, 13, I got my WPRA card. At that time, they allowed younger, it wasn't the aging rule. And so I remember going to my first PRCA rodeo. I remember going to El Paso and seeing my Gail Petska, who was my absolute idol. And I was like, wow, I'm running against her. And I remember, you know, everyone being so welcoming at that time until I won. Then it became, okay, little girl. You know,
now she's, yeah.
And I always think about, you know, if my parents had the means to really take me at that point to go hard, I don't know what would have happened, but they didn't. You know, my dad had a job, my mom had a job, and we had siblings, and so I didn't get to go too far. But I do remember competing at these rodeos and with some of my great role models.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to hear that. I mean, you're being inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is it's one of the peaks, right? Mm-hmm. But that in the process of you going through this experience, you've been given the gift of reliving all of these moments in your life. That's so beautiful to hear, and hearing you kind of go through all of that, it shows that each moment really had an impact, and that's exactly, you know, what I was asking earlier, is how all of those moments impacted you in every step of the way. And sometimes when you live those moments in that moment, you don't realize how much it impacts you until, like you mentioned, you're in bed at night and you're thinking about it. So that is so beautiful to hear. And I'm so honored to be sitting with you today and talking to you about this. And to go hand in hand with that, what does it also feel for you to see your work being recognized by the Cowgirl Museum?
Like I said, it was very overwhelming. It still is overwhelming. I tend to, in my life, do work on task lists, I guess. I don't know any other way to explain it. Like, I'll have like this. So I knew it was coming, and I would think about it, but then it started moving its way on up my little list of things to do, and then it became very like, oh my gosh, like this is happening to me. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame, and it just took some time to say, like, yeah, you worked very hard for this, Carole. Not that you planned it. It wasn't a goal like, hey, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. No, I just lived life to the best that I could.
Yeah.
And this is an explanation point to my career. It's like a bold explanation saying, yeah, done.
Well, you're a great representation to your community, to your family, to the INFR, everybody at Zion Enterprises, all the organizations that you work with, Navajo Nation, everything. You are, I mean, very well deserved. It's very well deserved that you will be getting inducted into the Cowgirl Museum Hall of Fame. And you're going to be sitting alongside all of the women who come from very many different, that's the most beautiful part of this year, is that everybody comes from different careers and disciplines and lines of work. But to see everybody come together hand in hand and be able to learn from each other is the most beautiful part of this. So I am so grateful that we got to sit down with you today. Very thankful for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carole.